Good evening. It gives me great pleasure to declare open this ceremony. Can I ask you all to please take your seats? Well, a very good evening to all of you as Vice-Chancellor and President of our university. It's a great honour to bring a little bit of Ulster University to Washington, D.C. this evening, and I would like to welcome you all to this special ceremony honouring Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi for her lifelong commitment and leadership, for her continuing interest in the affairs of Northern Ireland, and for her pioneering achievements as a woman in politics. Ulster University has a long-standing connection to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. We hosted the Tip O'Neill Chair in Peace, supported by the Island Funds, a distinguished position that was held between the years of 2002 and 2009 by Speaker O'Neill's friend, John Hume. That legacy continues to this day through the establishment of the John Hume and Thomas P. O'Neill Chair in Peace at Ulster University. The chair was supported by a number of individuals and organisations, most notably the Island Funds for Ireland, which is represented here this evening. I'd also like to thank Tip O'Neill's son, Tom O'Neill, for his role in making this event happen. Ulster University works with a wide range of partners, many of whom are represented here this evening, including my colleague from Queen's University Belfast, President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Ian Greer, and the representatives from across the business and civic society, and we're particularly delighted to have representation from both the British and Irish governments, as well as representation from all 5 of the Northern Ireland political parties. Ulster University is a progressive, forward-looking institution, and like many, we've been reflecting on the political, social, and economic achievements of the last 25 years. But we're also focused on the next 25 years, and want to ensure that as a region, we have built the skills and capacity for the next generation of leaders. Leaders like Grace Boyle, our current Ulster University Students' Union President. We're delighted that Grace and 2 of her peers, Carl Duncan and Holly Watson, have been accepted onto the Washington Island programme this year, an initiative that's done so much to nurture the talents and lift the aspirations of many of our young leaders in Northern Ireland. And we'd like to thank the team at Washington Island programme for their support in helping to coordinate this ceremony too. Ulster University is also privileged to have many friends of influence. One such friend is Sister Dr. Mary Turley, representing the Flax Trust, an organisation committed to reconciliation through economic and social development. We are most appreciative for your support, Sister Mary, and thank you for your help in the background for this evening. For anyone who's been at the various events in Washington this week, there can be no doubt that the special relationship that the United States has with Northern Ireland is well demonstrated. And I'd like to thank the U.S. Consul General Paul Narain and his team for all their help for our programme here in Washington, but also the support and advocacy we receive in Northern Ireland on a day-to-day basis. Thank you. We've also been delighted to meet through the week's Special Economic Envoy to Northern Ireland, Joe Kennedy. And I think I speak for everyone in the room in Northern Ireland that we look forward to working with him. Our new university strategy actually is entitled People, Place and Partnership, Delivering Sustainable Futures for All. And I've heard echoes with those same priorities and foci in the words that I've heard in speeches over the course of this week. Finally, yes, thank you. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge our colleagues in the Executive Office. I'm delighted to welcome our Head of the Civil Service, Jane Brady, and would like to thank you and your team, Jane, for your ongoing support. In particular, I'd like to thank Andrew Elliott and his team from the Northern Ireland Bureau, who are based in this beautiful building and have helped extensively with organising this evening. Thank you again. Now, that's quite enough for me, and I'm going to hand over to our Chancellor, Dr. Colin Davidson, who will now take us through the ceremony. So, Chancellor, it is the wish of the University Senate that an honorary degree be conferred at this congregation. By virtue of the authority vested in me, I confer honorary degrees on those whose names have been approved by the Ulster University Senate. I call upon Professor Cathy Gormley-Heenan, Provost of Ulster University,
to present the Honourable Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi for the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
Chancellor, it is my honour to present Nancy Pelosi for the award of Doctor of Laws in recognition of her outstanding contribution to politics and international relations and for profiling the pursuit of peace on the island of Ireland during her long and exceptionally distinguished congressional career. Nancy Pelosi was born Nancy D'Alessandro in 1940 in Baltimore, Maryland, as the youngest child and only daughter of Thomas Jr. and Nancy D'Alessandro, a very political family in a highly political city. Only a few years before she arrived, her father had been elected as a Democratic member of Congress for Maryland. In 1947, he was elected the mayor of Baltimore, a position that he had held for 12 years. Now, a childhood surrounded by politics led Nancy D'Alessandro to a bachelor's degree in political science at Trinity College, a private Catholic university for women in Washington, D.C. in 1962. And while studying at Trinity, she met Paul Francis Pelosi, who was studying in nearby Georgetown University. They were married in September 1963. Nancy and Paul Pelosi went on to have 4 daughters and son together, with Nancy at the centre of the children's lives. In a later interview, her daughter Christine, herself an elected member of the Democratic National Committee, remarked, "She's used to synchronised chaos. She's used to people wanting different things and wanting to strive. And she's used to competition among people." After a short period living in New York, the Pelosis moved to San Francisco in 1967, a city that Nancy was destined to dominate politically for decades. Her activism started almost immediately. Christine said, whenever there was a meeting of Democratic Party officials at a barbecue or a fundraiser or a veterans parade, we were all there, all 5 of us loaded up in the car and my mom driving us around. Nancy quickly became an influential voice within the California Democratic Party and became a critical ally of the sitting congressman for San Francisco, Philip Burton. And in 1976, she was elected as a member of the Democratic National Committee for California and a year later elected as Democratic Party chair for Northern California. Her skills as a political organizer and a campaigner were already obvious. And by 1981, Nancy Pelosi was the chair of the California Democratic Party, the largest state Democratic Party in the Union, and served as the host committee chairwoman when the Democratic National Convention was held in San Francisco in 1984. When, following the sudden death of the sitting congresswoman, the congressional seat in San Francisco became vacant in 1987, Nancy Pelosi won the candidacy of the Democratic Party in a tough battle and then won the subsequent special election by a 2-to-1 margin. She has since been re-elected on a further 18 occasions, never with any significant opposition, and often winning around 80% of the vote. It's impossible in a short address to do justice to this sort of a political career. Few politicians have made such a mark on legislation and institutions, broken so many social barriers, or survived the heat of repeated political storms as Nancy Pelosi. Her personal courage was on display as early as 1991 when she joined other members of Congress in Tiananmen Square to protest against Chinese government policy. 10 years later, Nancy Pelosi received over 100 nominations for the post of party whip, the number 2 position in the party in Congress. When she was elected in 2002, she was the first woman to ever hold that position. A glass-shattering achievement repeated so often that it became a hallmark of her entire career. In October 2002, Nancy Pelosi led a rebellion by the majority of Democrats in Congress against the Iraq War, signalling a major shift of power within the Democratic caucus. And within months, she had been elected by her party as the House Minority Leader, another first for a woman in any party. After leading her party to victory in the 2006 midterm elections, Pelosi became the first woman Speaker in the history of the House of Representatives and the second in line of presidential succession. As Ellen Malcolm, the founder of Emily's List, observed, having Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House is going to send a very wonderful lesson to the American public that women can be strong, that they can be tough, that they can be effective, and that they can lead this country as political leaders. Nancy Pelosi has embodied the role of Madam Speaker ever since then. The consummate political organiser of her generation, she won the respect from her opponents even as they targeted their fire on her. Like few politicians in her generation, she understood Congress. She knew how to build consensus, compromise, insist, and manage diverse interests. And she knew when to call a vote and when to delay. Speaker Pelosi spearheaded Democratic opposition to President Bush's plans to reform Social Security, ensuring that no bill was ever presented to Congress. She negotiated with the Senate to produce compromise legislation to save the economy during the 2008 financial meltdown, and she shifted US opinion on the Iraq War. A supporter of Barack Obama's candidacy for president, Nancy Pelosi was a key ally in the new administration's effort to rescue the US economy after that financial crash, and the architect of the landmark Affordable Care Act, the most significant expansion of medical insurance coverage in the US for 40 years. In spite of significant losses in the 2010 congressional elections, Pelosi retained the confidence of her party and was again re-elected as Minority Leader. By 2017, Pelosi emerged again, this time as one of President Trump's most vocal opponents in Congress. In February 2018, she broke the record for the longest ever speech in the House when she spoke for over 8 hours to oppose the President's plans to deport undocumented minors from the US. I promise I won't go on for 8 whole hours. After elections in November returned a record number of women to Congress, Pelosi became the first Speaker since the 1950s to return to office after losing control. For 2 years, the House of Representatives was locked in opposition to President Trump, with Nancy Pelosi often in the forefront. Yet in spite of growing tensions, she negotiated new measures to protect the US economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. On the 6th of January 2021, Nancy Pelosi presided as Speaker as Congress met to certify the results of the presidential election. When a mob outside stormed the Capitol, Pelosi was whisked away by the Secret Service to Fort McNair, where she rapidly emerged as the leader in responding to the attack. Videos from that time recorded a Speaker who never lost her composure, who barely raised her voice, calmly urging her colleagues to send help while working out a way for the House and Senate to reconvene. Emerging as a model of bravery, calm, and decisiveness, she told a reconvened Congress, "To those who have strove to tear us from our responsibilities, you have failed. To those who have engaged in the gleeful desecration of this, our temple of democracy, American democracy, justice will be done." And so Speaker Pelosi was seldom out of the news. Her ability to unite the factions of her party made her perhaps the central figure in delivering President Biden's legislative agenda, and she successfully managed her party to pass the American Rescue Plan Act of 21, a path which set us towards COVID recovery, the Infrastructure and Investment Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which reinforced America's transition into a green economy. The congressional delegations she led to Ukraine and Taiwan in 2022 drew huge international attention and made a strong statement about America's commitment to democracy on the world stage. Now, of course, as Speaker, Nancy Pelosi took an increasingly active interest in Irish affairs, leading a group of members of the Congressional Irish Congress, including Congressman Richie Neal, to Dublin, Belfast, Derry and London in the spring of 2019, and underlining her party's commitment to an open border in Ireland as a keystone of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. Ulster University was particularly honoured by her presence with us on our Londonderry campus to witness the conferring of an honorary degree on her friend and colleague, Congressman Neal. And she took the opportunity to make clear that she supported efforts to find a special solution for Northern Ireland, making waves in the political negotiations that were then taking place over the conditions of Brexit. And by the time Nancy Pelosi announced that she would step down as Speaker last November and as leader of the Democrats in Congress, there was broad agreement, even from opponents, that she would be a tough act to follow. Nancy Pelosi became one of very few figures who have defined an epoch in American and world affairs. Her bravery, her abilities as an organiser, her determination, and her clarity marked her out from her peers. Her devotion to duty and her attention to people are exceptional. Her appetite for political battle is legendary. As Ralph Hall, a longtime Texas Republican, commented, "When you battle Nancy Pelosi as much as I have, you're bound to get a few wrinkles." For her lifelong commitment and leadership, for her continuing interest in the affairs of Northern Ireland and Ireland, and for her pioneering achievements as a woman in politics, it is my honour to recommend Nancy Patricia Pelosi to you. Chancellor, in the name of the Ulster University Senate, I present Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi for the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, in the name of the Ulster University Senate, I present to you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. So may I be the first to congratulate you, Dr. Pelosi. I call upon our new honorary graduate, Speaker Emerita Dr. Nancy Pelosi, to address the congregation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chancellor. This is a great honor for me, and I will strive to make my remarks shorter than the encomium. It's wonderful to hear the story of her life, but it was a story that was about so many other people achieving the successes that we exist. And I'll talk about that as we go along. But thank you, Chancellor Colin Davidson, for your leadership of the university, for being an artist in such an important position, which the arts bring us all together. President Bartholomew, thank you so much for this great honor, which I am so thrilled to receive. And Professor Kathy Wormley, thank you so much for reviewing the story of my life. I hope that you were making out your shopping list or whatever you do when you listen to long speeches. But that was the path. That was the path. Really, it's with great humility that I express my deepest appreciation for this honorary degree, which means a great deal to me. My hope to help preserve the peace and prosperity in Northern Ireland was done with the full participation of so many members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the Capitol, and in the Congress, and really across the country. I'll talk about Richie some more in a moment, but I do want to acknowledge that it was really the outside Irish community and others who cared about peace in Northern Ireland, and one of them is here today. My good friend Terry O'Sullivan, his wife Yvette, he's from San Francisco, but he is a international president of laborers' union, and our friends in the labor movement were very interested in this. In fact, I don't think there's ever been an anniversary in the 25 years that you haven't been in Belfast for it. Are you going this year? Okay, think about it. In any event, this is a reflection not only of the Congress, but of the American people, because the Good Friday Agreement is a value to us. It's not an issue, it's not an agreement, it's a value. And we'll talk more about that. All of us are privileged to welcoming you from the grassroots, from the leadership in our community, to our members of Congress, the Ulster University, to our nation's capital, to you, the leadership, and so many of you. The university, as you know, is an esteemed institution which has earned the respect of the world for its academic excellence. You can take pride in your many alumni as you would mold minds of future leaders who are helping fulfill the promise of peace under the Good Friday Agreement. And I remember fondly, as was referenced in the encomium, that visiting Derry in 2019 and watching my friend, Chairman Richie Neal, receive his honorary degree. In his acceptance of it, well, he received the degree, but he also presented the John Hume Tip O'Neill lecture that day. And in that speech, he talked about his grandmother Rose, really a teenager, 18 or so, turning away from her family and friends whom she might never see again, coming to the United States, making a life, not only making life better for herself and then her family, which would be the American dream, her chairman, her grandson accepting that award as the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. I say that like this because I'm an appropriator, but anyway, the American dream, Rose, a brave young woman, the American dream. That's a familiar story in America. And all those people who came with their hopes, their dreams, their courage, their determination, their optimism, those are American traits. They all made America more American. So, Richie, we're so proud of you, your family, and of Rose. Some others. Some other American families who have made our country better. One, we acknowledged and applauded Joe Kennedy earlier, here with his wife, Lauren. You know that story. The whole world knows that story. And then the O'Neill family. Some of them will be with us in the course of the traffic. They'll be with us. Tom O'Neill and Susan O'Neill. Again, very famous names, but really emblematic of so many other people who came and helped build America and our values and the rest. Now, Joe, as you know, is a special envoy for Northern Ireland, and we acknowledged you earlier in that role, Joe. So, again, Susan and Tom will be with us. It's a great pride that I, again, accept this honorary degree, joining the ranks of Chairman Neal and George Mitchell and many others. Yesterday, I called George Mitchell and I said, I'm going to get this award tomorrow, and I'm so excited and so proud and humble and confident about the whole thing. And George Mitchell said, and I said, may I give them a message from you? And he said, I have received the honorary degree from Ulster University, and I want you to tell them that I hope you are as proud of that award as I am. And so he sends you all his regards. What an important role he played in the Good Friday agreements. We're so proud of that, and I'm hoping that he will be able to visit. I told him I have as much pride as he did in the award. Inspired by George Mitchell, it's been my official honor to work alongside Chairman Neal to preserve the peace between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. Richie is not only chairman of the committee, but he's co-chair of the Friends of Ireland in the Congress, who've played such an important role on this. But again, that's official. personally, I'm honored to receive it because when I was a brand new member of Congress, have I gone past saying call me in it? I've got more to say here. When I was a brand new member of Congress, I was asked to host John Hume in our home. The Irish community in the San Francisco Bay Area was so excited by that occasion. And what was interesting about it is, of course, we were thrilled beyond words. It was this icon was coming to our home. Our children were so excited. They were younger then. And and it was the first time, Madam Ambassador, and we're so honored that the British ambassador is with us tonight. Thank you for being with us. It was the first time that the British Consul General had come to an Irish event, at least in San Francisco. Consul General. It was remarkable. We had the Irish Consul General, the British Consul General. So it was quite remarkable. And what's interesting, which I learned just in the last few days, is that the Irish Consul General, who was there that night, is the husband of the Irish ambassador to the United States. Brian Hassan was her husband. He is her husband, and he was the Consul General. So this all just comes around. All these relationships, confidence building along the way that makes us, takes us down a path to peace. Just wanted to, I think that's quite remarkable that he was the Consul General at the time. John said something that evening, John Hume said something that evening that you've heard him say elsewhere again and again. He said to that room, as we bring down the walls in Belfast, we must also bring down the walls in our hearts if we're going to have peace. And that's how John Hume was, wasn't it? As you know, we gather ahead of a momentous milestone, a quarter of a century of the Good Friday Agreement. On that holy day, the world witnessed the miraculous birth of a new peace, one only some had ever dared to imagine. With the beginning and the signing of these historic accords, which America feels very proud to be a part of advancing, Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic ended centuries of bloodshed, a triumph of peace over warfare, understanding over animosity, hope over despair. And what a difference the agreement has made. In the late 1990s, I traveled with a congressional delegation to Northern Ireland. But first, I stopped in Ireland for the christening of my grandson at Kilquay Church in County Wicklow. My daughters, those grandchildren, their grandparents lived in Kilquay in County Wicklow. And so the birth, christenings, funerals, all that happened in Kilquay. And so we went for the christening, and then we took the train, my daughter and I, to Northern Ireland. This was the late 90s. It was one of the hottest days that Ireland has ever seen. It's great for me. I'm a Mediterranean, so I was right with it. But they kept saying on the radio, the Irish are going swimming, and they're putting stuff on their Irish skin and the rest of that. But it was so beautiful to go that distance by land, because usually we would fly. But as we got close to the border, there we could see barbed wire, Union Jacks, which would be appropriate, but barbed wire and tanks and soldiers. It was really frightening as we rode in there. Fast forward 20 years, we go back again under Richie's leadership, 2019, and the only difference between the two countries was the color of the line on the ground, yellow or white, from one country to the other, completely open border. So remarkable, but I would not have appreciated it more fully if I had not seen what the border was like before. So we walked arm, again, when we were there, we did so many things. One of the things that I love best is we walked arm in arm with Pat Hume across the Peace Bridge in Derry. Pat Hume was so much a part of what John Hume did. She left us recently, as you know, but she was there when Richie made his speech, right, at Ulster. She was there that day, and we were so thrilled to see her. then walked arm in arm with Pat Hume across the historic Peace Bridge in Derry. We visited Stormont Parliament and saw the stunning Reconciliation work of art there. But let me just tell you this, the time when we were in Stormont more than 20 years before, quite different from when we were going now. Then, in the enthusiasms of the moment, we saw one of our members in our delegation almost come to fisticuffs with someone who would later receive the Nobel Prize for Peace. So a lot changed in all of that. And when we were there, we saw, as I said, the Reconciliation sculpture, a tremendous monument to peace. And we attended a reception, more like a big rally of all young people, school children that the speaker hosted for us. And then the program consisted of a Protestant student and a Catholic student to speak. They both had the same message. They had not known the bloody conflict. They had known peace. And both of them said the same thing. We're not going back. We're not going back. So again, here we have a Spirit of Youth statue here. Spirit of Youth, just by coincidence. Chancellor, another work of art. Reconciliation, Spirit of Youth. This is Spirit of American Youth. It's fitting that we're here in that spirit because this was to commemorate the young people in the invasion, the Normandy invasion. So it was always about making peace. The generation of young people now in that room that we saw were first freed from the shackles of conflict, the inheritors of peace, and how grateful the world was that Ulster University is helping these future leaders blaze a path boldly into the future and made real the words of the beloved poet Seamus Heaney. Once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. You know that. Indeed, our young people are the tidal wave, and they are working to make hope and history rhyme by preserving a just and lasting peace. So for the young people, we will hope that there would be an embrace of the Windsor Framework. As we mark the 25th anniversary, we have good and hopeful news of the recently announced Windsor Framework. Madam Ambassador, the consensus reached by the European Union and the United Kingdom must honor the Good Friday Agreement. We've made that clear every step of the way. We would love to have a bilateral with the UK, but unless there is respect for the Good Friday Agreement, that cannot happen. So we're just hoping that, make no mistake, the Good Friday Agreement remains a pillar of American foreign policy that must be respected by all parties. Yet what was achieved in Belfast 25 years ago is more than just about peace. The peace it brought to Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. As I said in my remarks to the Dáil, can you imagine I spoke to the Dáil? I was telling the Taoiseach earlier, when I went to speak to the Dáil, and I went in there, I said, oh my goodness, the Taoiseach is here. And they said, yeah, this is a parliamentary government. This is where he is. And that was pretty exciting until Bono showed up. And I don't think he's a regular at the Dáil, but what I said there is we treasure the Good Friday Accord, not only because of what it means for Northern Ireland, that would be reason enough. We treasure the Good Friday Accord because it is not just a treaty, it is an ethic, a value, a beacon. We treasure the Good Friday Accord because of what it says is possible for the entire world, a reason to hope for every place that dreams that reconciliation will be possible for them too. Thankfully, we had a president at the time, President Bill Clinton, who participated in the creation of the Good Friday Agreement. George Mitchell, Bill Clinton. Now we have a President, Joe Biden, who is fully committed to preserving this vision, and not just because he's Irish. We're hoping that he will visit Belfast next month to mark the anniversary. Much of that depends on the progress of the Windsor arrangement, but I think that framework will be there. And we mark the anniversary of Good Friday Agreement. Let us take up peace as our common cause in Northern Ireland, in Ukraine, and across the world. Thank you again, Ulster University, for your commitment of leadership to the future, the young people, future. It's all about them. Thank you for this special honor, and I'll display it with great pride in the Capitol, but I will always cherish it in my heart. May God bless Northern Ireland, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you so much for this privilege.
Dr. Pelosi, thank you for your powerful words. You have inspired us. You continue to inspire us, and in turn, you inspire the whole world. Thank you, too, for referencing your own experience of the power of art and the power of how art, the role that art can play in healing and peace. And also in referencing that as an institution, we at Ulster prize greatly the days, the years ahead. That's what it's all about. So, thank you. I now invite Ulster University Honorary Graduate Chairman Dr. Richie Neal to address the congregation.
Thank you, Chancellor Davidson. Thanks to Provost Kathy Gormley-Heenan, and thanks to the audience that's assembled here tonight, including the British Ambassador and our former colleague Joe Kennedy, as well as many members of the political parties across the Republic in the north of Ireland. There are people who choose to argue with history, and there are people who choose to make history. Nancy Pelosi chose to make history. I can't tell you how many times in the confines of her office where we shaped legislation that will benefit millions of Americans from years to come. She had a profound influence not just on the United States, but on humanity, and the way she saw the equation of the world and how wealth was distributed, how gifts were granted. But she also saw something that I thought that was extraordinary. She saw millions of Americans who didn't have health insurance. And I'll just tell you a funny story, because part of the lore of politics is the people you meet. We know that. And I had a colleague, a Democrat, and he kept telling me for months he was not voting for the Affordable Care Act under any circumstances. So I listened patiently. 2 days before the vote, before he could say anything, I said, okay, look, you're going to vote for this. And he said, I'm not voting. I said, oh, yes, you are. I said, I'm telling you. And I said, the only thing you need to figure out right now is, do you surrender to Pelosi or do you surrender to Obama? And my advice, surrender to Pelosi. I call attention to that because in the years through the pandemic and before, we wrote the CARES Act in 8 days in her office with the leader of the previous administration, not the president, but the previous administration, Secretary Mnuchin. The CHIPS Act, the CARES Act. We renegotiated the largest trade agreement in the history of the world, and she was in Vienna calling me. I was in Boston getting ready to conduct the Boston Pops, and she kept saying, where's the AFL-CIO? Do you have them? I said, they're there. I just need them to confirm it. I said, I can't get a hold of the president because he's in the mountains of Pennsylvania. And she said, I don't care what you do. You need to get him on that call and have him say he's for this tonight. So here I am conducting the Boston Pops, and the thought that's on my mind is, what does Trump think at the AFL-CIO? The other part of this legacy is that she mentioned it, and she was very modest about the manner in which she spoke of it. the CHIPS Act in America, where children have health insurance. Every child in Massachusetts has health insurance because of Nancy Pelosi. And I use that equation to point out a parallel for what happened with the Good Friday Agreement, with those two generations of children who said that they had not known the destructive forces of what had taken place there for all of that time. And the Good Friday Agreement has proved durable and inspiring to the world. So as part of the introduction, as noted, whether it was Tiananmen Square, Ukraine, or Belfast, or Taiwan, Nancy Pelosi's views of the reach and role of America were always consistent. Another hilarious moment, I was talking to her when you were the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. You talk to the Speaker of the House sometimes 10 times a day, all hours of the day and night. And we were going back and forth on events, and she told me she was going to Taiwan. And she said, I called the White House and I told them I was going to Taiwan, and somebody said, well, we'll get back to you. And she said, I didn't call you to ask if I could go to Taiwan. I called you to tell you I was going to Taiwan. And I thought, again, the inspiration that offered to the world to see her in Taiwan, despite the edicts that had come from the Chinese government about her visit. That's leadership. That connotes an assertiveness in the reach, the role, and the goodness of the American people. As we come to the eve of the celebration of the Good Friday Agreement and this international holiday we're going to celebrate tomorrow as well, I like to remind people, as I did with our friends in the media tonight, earlier, and for those of you in the audience who took historic challenge and courage to do what you did, remind ourselves, 30 years ago, there were 30,000 British soldiers in an area the size of the state of Connecticut. The helicopters, the watchtowers, the street sweepers, you couldn't move. We are now near the precipice of being able to say that we don't want to talk about two communities. We want to talk about two traditions that live in one community. And that was part of Nancy Pelosi's legacy. She always spent that extra hour, that extra day, to make sure that the goal that she sought was to be achieved. I think back of those days because it wasn't popular to take the positions that she was taking. She clearly, when she walked out of the room, never did you hear anybody say, I think Nancy Pelosi's undecided. She was decided when she went in, and she was decided when she left. And one of the honors for me of a lifetime is, it was kind of a backhanded compliment. The Wall Street Journal didn't always look favorably on our positions. They said Pelosi and her top lieutenant, Neal. I'll take that title. That was a pretty good one for me. She has contributed, as I've noted, to the history of this world, and she's done it with an air of modesty all of the time. Friendly, and I think that one of the challenges we have in modern American politics, that there are people that put on a good seminar, and there are people that are good at social media, and they can't wait to get to the cable shows. Her attitude was, we're going to improve the lives of the American people. And you do that through legislation, and you sit in a room endlessly, and you think we're never going to get there, and weeks or months go by, and you do get there. She understood how to count. So the people that make these spectacular arguments, we should be doing this and we should be doing that. I will say this with some sense of experience. I don't ever remember the two of us ever asking them what they thought when we were doing big things. We said, just time to do them. And that's how it was done. So when you think of all of the legislation that passed on her watch, and you think of the fact that speakers of the House, it's very difficult to have a national constituency. And in my time, I think of Speaker O'Neal as having had a national constituency, largely because the other party was after him as well. And I think now you're going to be able to say that for decades to come, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, receiving this degree from a renowned university, had an international constituency because of her leadership. Thank you for allowing me to have been part of it, Madam Speaker.
Chairman Dr. Neal, thank you for those words. It's great for us as an institution to become reacquainted with you again. and congratulations again to our new honorary graduate. Welcome to the Ulster University community. And thank you all for joining us this evening at this very special event. Please do join us, stay for refreshments. And I now declare this ceremony closed. Will the congregation please stand?